Supernatural is probably one of the most popular TV shows of all time. I think that's a reasonable, unhot take, but I got some good info for you today. If you've never seen Supernatural, first of all, this is my recommendation. There are 16 seasons. I will say 1 or 2 seasons aren't the best, but in general, for a show that ran 16 seasons, nobody did it like Supernatural, and they set the bar for how it works. So today I'm gonna recommend a whole bunch of book series for you based on my love of Supernatural. So if you love Supernatural and you're looking for more book fantasy stuff that's kind of like that, this is where you're gonna get it. Hello, my name is Andrew Givler. This is GivReads. I am an author, booktuber, YouTuber guy who doesn't sleep very often. And I love urban fantasy, which is technically what Supernatural falls under. So today, we're gonna dive into some of my favorite series about them. I'm gonna tell you what's great about them without any spoilers, okay? And recommend them to you. As always, if you enjoy the content, hit the like button. That actually really helps. Also, we're trying to get this channel partnered, so hitting the subscribe button so you don't miss any future content is really important. And if you wanna check out any of the books I recommend, if you click the links I use in the description, gives me a little kickback, pays the bills for these edits. I appreciate it. So as I said, Supernatural is one of the greatest TV shows of all time, in my opinion, especially in the like fantasy genre, okay? And if you've never seen it, it's about 2 brothers who are hunters. They hunt supernatural beings that prey upon humans and protect us. They're our little protectors in the night. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff that goes on, a lot of lore, a lot of other fantastic things, and I'm not gonna spoil that for you. But the thing that's really cool about Supernatural is it sort of has this whole, all the ancient myths are real, right? They deal with vampires, werewolves, but they also hunt down like godlings and angels and demons and demigods and monsters from different cultures and myths and legends, right? What if all those things existed in our world and we had to deal with them? We had to have people who could deal with them. That's kind of what Supernatural's about. And for me, that's what my favorite kind of urban fantasy is. When everything, all the stories we have just become a little bit more real, it makes our world feel more interesting to me, which is one of the reasons I really love urban fantasy. So Supernatural did an excellent job with their lore, with like showing all these cool monsters you've never heard about. A big part of how they often fight the monsters is having to do research to figure out the lore of the monsters. You learn a little about the culture it's coming from, the legend, the myth that originates it. So you get a little bit of education, a little bit of flavor from our world, but you get something real. And there's a bunch of fantasy series that I think do this really, 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 really well, and I want to recommend them to you, okay? So we're gonna do that. And I'm gonna begin this by getting the elephant in the room out of the way, okay? I talk about this a lot. It's one of my favorite series by one of my favorite authors. If you like Supernatural and you haven't watched the Dresden Files, that's your fault. I read the Dresden Files. If you like Supernatural and haven't read the Dresden, don't watch it, read it. That's your fault, okay? I can just scold you. This is me scolding you, all right? That's number 1 on the list. But if you guys know me, you know that. So we're going to talk about things other than Dresden Files today because I talk about Dresden Files enough. But the premise of Dresden Files in 10 seconds or less is it's about a wizard private eye who lives in Chicago. He advertises himself as a private detective, but he also advertises himself as a wizard, and he solves crimes for people. Then a bunch of other stuff happens that's way bigger and more involved, and it moves on from that, but that's the premise, and that's great. Go read it. Link in the description below. Also, I'm going to mention his son, James Butcher, wrote Dead Man's Hand, which I did a glowing, in-depth review about. Look, it'll probably pop up on the screen right here. I did a whole in-depth review about how great that is, but it also is the same sort of thing where like it's in our world, you've got wizards running, or witches in that one running around, and a lot of lore and myths pulled from creatures that we already believe in used in that. So if you're looking for that vibe, I think both of those are great. I've already talked about them. I'm gonna talk about new things today because that's what we do here. So first book that I have to recommend is called The Iron Druid Chronicles by Kevin Hearn. Hearn? Names with an extra E on the end give me anxiety because I have dyslexia and I cannot do this. So if I mispronounce it, I apologize. I really like the books. I just am an idiot. This is a 10-book series. Now, one of the great things about my pitch about this series is it's done. Yay! That's right. So if you only like reading series once they're done, or you hate having to wait for the next one to come out, the series has been completed for a while. You can start it and just binge it all in one go. And it's 10 books, so you get a lot of juicy story. Iron Druid's really interesting because the main character, instead of being like a wizard or a witch or something that maybe is a little bit more classic for urban fantasy, is a druid. And I personally don't know as much about druid lore. I know it's really, really like bound in like Celtic and some Saxon origin. So you got a lot of like Irish and Scottish influence on it. And the main character is a druid who's been alive for thousands of years. His name is Atticus. He's had a lot of run-ins with like the Tirna Og, which are some of the original Fae. Like Shakespeare took the Fae and incorporated them in a lot of stuff. Like that's where the name Titania, Mab, Gloriana all come from. But some of the older names and some of the older stuff like Oberon and oh gosh, I'm gonna look like an idiot. I can't remember all of them. Those come from the Irish legends of like Tir and Og. Also the Morrigan, stuff like that. So really cool because you're exposed to the myths of a culture that doesn't necessarily get a light shown on it in urban fantasy all the time, which is really, really exciting. Also, the story is very cool. He is sort of like in hiding. Most of the Druids have been hunted down and killed off, so it's sort of a dead art. He's one of the last ones. The gods do not like him because he sort of screwed them over a long time ago, and there's some beef, and he sort of eventually gets discovered, and then people hunt him down, and he has to make deals with vampires and werewolves and you name it, and all that kind of stuff. So it all pulls in, it all ties together, and then there's some cool, really big overarching plot stuff, as well as a different magic system than the one that is like most commonly used. A wizard is a class, right? And so there's only so much difference in the magic and what they do, and that's what's fun. So really, really different perspective, really, really different myth that it really focuses on. I didn't know much about a lot of the like I said, Celtic and Irish legends of the Fae before I got into this. Even though like the Chronicles of Prydain were one of my favorite books as a kid, like the Book of Three and all that by Lloyd Alexander, and that actually stole a bunch of it. Like Aran, who was like the bad guy in that, who was like also one of the evil gods of the Irish Fae, stuff like that. He pulled a lot of their legends, and I didn't even know it. So it filled in a lot for me, and if you like this kind of stuff, I think you'll really enjoy it. They're fun, easy to read, fast books. Number 2 is honestly another incredibly famous one, but I kind of feel like it doesn't get talked about as much as it should. And it's American Gods by Neil Gaiman. Now, I've talked about Gaiman a little bit before. I have also talked about how he and Pratchett wrote Good Omens, which is a great book. American Gods is something he wrote on his own. And in a lot of ways, Jim Butcher gets a lot of credit for being like the father of urban fantasy. I often call him that. But I think in other ways, it's Gaiman. And Gaiman sort of started breaking a lot of rules that Butcher is like a very like straight up, like this is a very serious book and it's going to be very serious and you're going to enjoy it, right? Gaiman is very serious, but he likes to break a lot of rules. He's famous, like in Sandman for personifying death, right? Making every single attribute that exists a person, and they have wants and desires and they fulfill a role. That's like stuff he's really, really known for. American Gods is set in modern day, and it's about all the gods that nobody believes in anymore living amongst us, sort of like depowered. Like faith is sort of the thing that fuels them, and without followers they have no power anymore, so they're just kind of weak and hanging out and scraping by, working dead-end jobs, trying to figure out how to live and how to become relevant again, right? Just like me, I'm trying to figure out how to become relevant again. Maybe I'm an American god. That's terrifying. And it's this really cool journey. You learn a lot about a bunch of different gods, that have sort of fallen out of favor, that aren't as popular, right? Because some of the more popular ones get talked about, right? So a lot of the ones that you encounter with this sort of fallen from grace god is ones that we don't know about. Like I think there's some really cool Russian ones and other stuff that I didn't know about beforehand. And also, like, how a lot of cultures have gods that are very similar, like Greeks and Romans had very, very similar gods. They shared pantheons. There's some other ones that are very similar to Thor out there. So it's like people who sort of lost the role as the lightning god because Thor won that election, essentially. Some really, really cool concepts tied around that. And the exploration of it's really, really neat. And the way it's set in our world just feels really crisp and beautiful. Gaiman's an incredible writer. It's just one book. It's done. There's nothing extra to read. Highly recommended. Again, link in the description below. My third recommendation, well, actually, I'm technically giving you 5 recommendations in this because I am a G. My third one is the Eric Carter series by Stephen Blackmore. Now, this is a really, really cool urban fantasy. It's set here in LA, which I really enjoy. It's the darkest one of all of these, I think. But the premise is basically Eric Carter's a wizard, and every wizard in this world is born with a knack. Now, not everybody's a wizard, and it is like modern day LA. Like this is happening without us who live here knowing about it, right? Every wizard has a knack, and it might be, I'm really good at levitation magic. I'm really good at whatever. Eric is a necromancer. And necromancers are creepy, right? Everybody thinks necromancy is a little evil. They think it's like an inherent, like, there's something wrong with you. And just as a kid, he starts seeing ghosts and learns he can talk to ghosts. So he's a wizard that even in the wizard community makes him sort of an outsider. People are disgusted by him. You deal with the dead. And he's a loser. He's down on his luck. Things are not going well because of that. He's not rich and powerful like a lot of the other wizards are. He's kind of edgy and dark and rough around the edges. And he's got a lot of trauma that he carries. And he sees trauma constantly because most ghosts are not happy things, right? He sees a lot of unhappy things. And he gets wrapped up into a whole bunch of stuff. He has to tangle with some gods like you always do. He gets caught in some bad deals. He gets forced to do some really, really cool stuff. And then, man, it goes somewhere really interesting. It has one of my favorite characters, the personifications of death, where he has some interactions with Santa Muerte, which as a necromancer is super, super cool. It captures a lot of the culture really well. I really enjoy it. And then the story keeps going. So like he gains in power, he goes in places. The most recent book was book 8 called Hate Machine, which just came out, which was really, really good. So this series is the one one that's still in progress, but Steven writes pretty regularly. I think they come out like once a year or so. I've been reading it for a long time. I highly recommend it. It was probably one of my second big urban fantasy series that I got into. And on this list, probably the second I enjoy the most. I don't know, that's hard to rate. Because also Dead Man Hand is new, but only has one book. American Gods also only has one book. But for me, I like a little bit darker. I think Iron Druid is a little more like fun. And this is a little more dark, and so I enjoy that particularly. But they're both excellent series, and you will really, really enjoy them. Again, link will be in the description below. So if you love Supernatural, like I said in the beginning of the video, all of these are great choices for you guys to check out. Now, okay, before we end the video, I do want to say, also, if you like Supernatural, you should maybe read my book too, because definitely that was a big influence on me. And my book also exists in this space where, there's things that are real from our world. Our myths and legends are real, and they're all showing up, and they all intermingle, and they cross over. I've got things like Orion the Hunter, spoilers, and other things that I'm not going to say. But a little shout out to myself. The link will be in the description below. If you have other shows that you want me to recommend series based off of, or other books you want me to recommend style-wise off of, leave a comment down below. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Help us build this new BookTube author channel. I love you guys, and we'll see you in the next one.